This past weekend, my hometown club, the Oakland Roots, was able to accomplish something pretty massive as they sold out the infamous Oakland Coliseum at a capacity of 26,575. Mind you, they were only planning to sell 15,000 tickets, but the demand was just too high. Despite being in the second tier of football in the US, that was a higher attendance than 11 out of the 14 MLS matches that happened the prior match week. In fact, that alone is a higher capacity than their poorly run neighbors, the San Jose Earthquakes, who are at most able to fill 18,000 at PayPal Park. Again, not bad for a second division team. So you might be asking yourself, who the heck even are the Oakland Roots and where do they even play? Well, to answer the latter first, the Roots currently find themselves in the United Soccer League Championship, or USL for short, which on paper is considered to be the second tier of US soccer. And despite the fact that the USL is considered the second tier of football in the US, due to the complicated nature of how soccer is structured here in the United States, USL realistically ends up being an entirely different league altogether that is actually competing with MLS to come out as top dog. As many of you guys know, clubs have to pay massive fees in order to join the corporate world that is MLS, and it's all a crazy mess with salary caps and so on. The USL more so takes the approach of almost all other leagues in the world, even going as far as integrating a relegation promotion system within the US soccer format to essentially directly combat MLS. USL prides itself on being a league that is home to dozens of teams that are all vital parts of their communities. Again, re-emphasizing the approach that they're closer to many of the other leagues in the world compared to MLS. And this is where clubs like my beloved Oakland Roots are able to flourish because they're able to directly combat their MLS counterparts like the San Jose Earthquakes that are ran like a corporation. Since the club's inception, the Roots have been directly tied to their community and given the people of Oakland a soccer club that they can truly love. Oakland as a city has essentially responded by giving the club nothing but its full support since day one. The 26,000 crowd that we were able to get out was for the league home opener where the club was returning to a very historical stadium within the city, but nonetheless the history and trajectory of the Roots is one that cannot go unignored as there has been many steps that got him to that point in the first place. And real quick boys, if you're new to the channel enjoying the content, don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. We're dropping weekly football videos, so make sure you hit that notification bell as well so you don't miss an upload. And if you're not new to the channel boys, welcome back, glad to have you around for another video. With that being said boys, let's get into the rise of the Oakland Roots and how they're pretty much taking over soccer in the Bay Area. So real quick, I do just want to talk about why the Roots get so much love in the city of Oakland. This city is rich in history and was once home to three major sports franchises: the Golden State Warriors, the Oakland Raiders, and the Oakland Athletics. Three historic franchises which brought joy to the city, and ones that regardless of results would always be received with love and adoration from its fans. Well, in 2016 the Warriors announced a move across the Bay Area to San Francisco. In 2017 the Raiders announced a move to Las Vegas, and the Athletics, who are ran by the San Jose Earthquakes owner John Fisher, were being ran into the ground as they were constantly trading away top talents for profit. All these hurt the city in great ways, as we were pretty much crying out for a sports organization that truly loved the city and appreciated the fans that were showing out for them every single week. In the case of the A's, the ownership pretty much drove every single fan out of that stadium, all in a ploy to be able to relocate them to somewhere else. On top of that, Oakland was also missing a professional football club, and the Oakland Roots were essentially able to recognize all of this and help fill in that gap. And with all of that, the Oakland Roots Soccer Club would be founded in 2018, and their name is not a coincidence by any chance. The founders of the club recognized how much Oakland needed a commitment in order for fans to truly buy into this project, and thus the name is also a representation of how the club is rooted solely in this city. Upon the announcement of the club, they would begin to sell merch, and this is all stuff that pretty much flew off the shelves, creating a large buzz in the city as the club prepared for its first season on the pitch. But now for the most important part, the football. Roots would get their play started by helping kick off the inaugural National Independent Soccer Association season in 2019, placing them in the third division of the US soccer system. They would waste no time in picking up local talent as they would sign three Oakland natives and Devontae DuBose, Julio Cervantes, and Johannes Harish. Aside from these three, they would also pick up three former MLS players in Benji Hoya, who was actually from San Jose, Victor Bernardes, who played for San Jose, and Jack McInerney. And the first man to take the mantle of head coach for the Roots would be another Bay Area native and former MLS man, Paul Bravo. So their first season, if we're being entirely honest, wasn't the prettiest. But before we get to the ugly, I do want to talk on some of the good points of the season. For example, the first ever home game for this club would be in front of a 4,500 sellout crowd, which already went to show the support that had been garnered. Their matches were being played at Laney College, a local community college with lots of history. Again, re-emphasizing the entire aspect of this is a local club, we're gonna push with everything that we have and use as many local resources as we can. But now for the ugly parts. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. They would go on to not win a single game in the league that that fall season, as they would draw 3 and lose 3. However, McInerney would score a beautiful hat-trick against California United strikers, and this is the type of performance that would win fans over, and the type of performance that led to Roots averaging just about a 4,900 attendance and selling out every home match that they could. Despite the poor finish in the 2019 season and having to reshuffle so many parts of the team, there was still a belief that we could turn things around for the 2020 season. Before this season, Roots would bring in Matt Fondy, who also had some prior MLS experience, a sleeper in Johnny Rodriguez, and also sacked Paul Bravo in order to bring in Jordan Farrell, all in the hopes to make the most out of the campaign. The club would get the 2020 season started off pretty decently, as in their first match, despite being down to 10 men, McInerney would find a late equalizer to salvage a point against Chattanooga, all this in front of a 5,600 sold out crowd, raising the capacity from the season before. In their following match, the Roots would go on to get their first ever NISA victory, as they would beat the Michigan Stars 2-1 at home. However, after all of this, a major life event happened that pretty much shut down all sports everywhere. And in April of that year, the NISA would announce that the rest of the season would pretty much get cancelled. And I will say, technically, Roots did finish this season at the top of the league. So should that be a league title? I'll leave that up to you, but I'll say yes. But on paper, it's not. But for the fall season of that year, the Roots would go on to have a good campaign. NISA has an odd format, so just follow along with me here. Roots would finish at the top of a 3-team conference, as 2 goals from Matt Fondy helped the club finish with a win and a draw. Topping the conference allowed them to enter the playoff group stage, a group stage table where the Roots would once again come out as first place, securing themselves as the top seed in the semifinal. They would make light work of Chattanooga in the semifinal, as they would eventually win 3-2 after some consolation goals from their opponents. However, the club would fall just short in the final, as they would let a 1-0 lead slip and came out as 2-1 losers against Detroit City FC. But this disappointment did not stop the club from aiming even higher. It would be announced in September of 2020 that the Roots would be making the jump to the USL Championship, the second division of the US soccer structure. In order to prepare for this competition, Roots would once again be making changes to the roster to help the quality of the squad all around. Nonetheless, Roots were ready to kick off in a competition that would bring more eyes to Oakland, and their first go around in the second division of US soccer would actually be pretty decent, especially considering they were coming from the third division. The club would manage to finish 4th place in the Western Pacific Division. This finish would help them make the playoffs, which is where it got really spicy. Roots, who on paper were considered a very standard team in USL, were matched against El Paso Locomotive in the quarterfinals, El Paso being considered arguably the 4th best team in all USL that season. And in a turn of events that no one saw coming, Jeremy Bokila, after coming onto the pitch, would get the go-ahead goal at the 78th minute, seeing the Roots win the match 1-0. Oakland, which is a city that just encompasses that feeling of being an underdog that always finds a way to make things happen, was able to see this feeling come to fruition on a football pitch. Absolutely beautiful scenes. Unfortunately for the club, the semi-final match against Orange County FC would see them come up just short, as after a grueling 0-0 draw, penalties would see Orange County come out as victors. But regardless of not being able to win a championship this season, Oakland showed out for the Roots, and the Roots reciprocated this love back. The same year in 2021, NFL legend and Oakland native Marshawn Lynch would even become part of the Roots ownership group, again re-emphasizing how much Oakland was really committed to the club and vice versa. After this campaign, the club would also take over the vacated training facility that once belonged to the former Oakland Raiders. The club was doing a lot of work to try and push the club in an upward trajectory. The club founders have talked about how they want one day for the Oakland Roots to be in conversation for the best sports clubs in the world, and while of course at the moment this is a massive feat, they are trying to do things in order to push this club in that forward direction. For example, they've definitely rolled the dice a couple of times to try and get a manager that is really able to push this club to the next level. The 2022 season saw the appointment of Juan Guerra as manager to get a fresh pair of ideas, and most notably for me, before the 2022 season, you saw the Roots go out and loan in Ottar Magnus Carlsen from Venezia, who was actively in Serie A that season. This is a pretty massive deal. You had a team in the second division of US soccer loaning in a guy from Serie A. Do you know how crazy that sounds? It could not have been an easy feat. However, like I said, in order for Roots to really hit that next gear, it was not going to be a cakewalk. It's going to be a long journey, and that's more or less what we saw in the 2022 season. This year, Roots were forced to move away from Laney College over to Pioneer Stadium at California State University East Bay. Reason being that Laney College made changes to the modular turf that they were using, and USL deemed the stadium ineligible to use. This definitely hampered the experience for Roots, but they did at least manage to finish 7th place in the Western Conference, which was good enough to get them playoffs. What also helped them finish in 7th place was the sacking of Juan Guerra and bringing in Noah Delgado as the interim manager, manager and eventual full-time manager. Once again harnessing the underdog power of the city of Oakland, the Roots would go on to upset the San Diego Loyal away from home in the conference quarterfinals, this time winning the match 3-0. This was considered a massive upset this season, but the conference semifinals would once again be the end of the road for the club, as the eventual champion San Antonio FC would be too much to handle. And from here, unfortunately, 2023 wouldn't get much better. And if we're being real, it went a little bit worse. After losing previous season's top goal scorer Carlson back to Venezia and failing to bring in too many major signings, the club would kind of struggle to make anything happen this campaign. A 10th place finish meant that they would have to regroup for the 2024 season and try and get back into the playoff picture. But despite these negatives, fan support from the city of Oakland was still there. As I mentioned earlier, in the good times and the bad times, Oakland fans have always been there for their club, and this was not going to change. And in fact, that same year, the club was able to raise $3.5 million in funds, which would go a long way to help the team. This year, you would also see Billy Joel Armstrong and Jason Kidd become part of the ownership group, more money coming in from people who are from Oakland. And the 2024 season would see a return to playoff football, as through the brilliance of Johnny Rodriguez, the club would see out a 7th place finish again. Unfortunately for the Roots, we wouldn't be able to get past the conference quarterfinals this time around, as the eventual champions Colorado Springs would prove to be too much in the playoffs. And this takes us to the current 2025 season. After having to endure playing in Hayward, California at Pioneer Stadium, the Roots were able to announce an agreement to play at the Oakland Coliseum this year for all of our home games. This same stadium that saw the highs and lows of the Oakland Raiders and the Athletics is now going to be home to the Roots. A stadium that is home to countless memories for sports fans in Oakland is now going to have the opportunity to create countless others for new fans of the club. While the campaign this year has not gotten off to the best start, as we're currently in a 3-game rut, as players like our new signings Jurgen Damm from Mexico and EJ Johnson become more integrated into the squad and the Coliseum becomes more of a fortress, there's potential for this season to be the turning of a new leaf when it comes to results. The support, the love, the adoration, it's all been there every single season, and it's just a matter of time until the results start to follow. If we continue to pack out the Coliseum, if we continue to garner the support, make it hard for teams to come play here, the results will follow, trust. And hey, you know what, on top of everything, every single one of the seasons, at least we're always releasing fire jerseys, the best jerseys in USL by far. And before we finish, I know I mentioned earlier the aspect that the Oakland Roots are very tapped into the community, and that's part of why they have so much support, and many clubs in USL. So we do need to talk about some of the community work that they do have. They have the Justice Fund, which is a fund they started to help initiatives that support race and gender equality. They have Project 510, which is essentially youth scouting in the city of Oakland. It's pretty much their second team. It plays in a lower division within USL, but this is a great outlet for the youth players in Oakland. I have seen firsthand how little resources a lot of the players in this city have, and if you're good enough, at least now you have the opportunity to play for Project 510, which could get you to the Oakland Roots first team, and from there sky's the limit. They have Oakland Soul, which is a women's club here in Oakland as well, so it's not just for the men. They have done community outreach to grow the game of football in Oakland, California. They're always at community events. They're showing up at elementary schools and doing outreach there. These guys are everywhere. They're doing everything they can to help the city of Oakland grow the sport, to grow their fan base, so that it's all one great continuous cycle. It's really beautiful to see. To be able to see my city get behind a team like this, essentially sell out the Coliseum to as much as we could for a football club, is amazing to see. If you haven't already, check out the Roots, check out your local USL team. Will the USL maybe one day take over the MLS? Who really knows? Maybe MLS acquires USL or vice versa. We will never really know. All I know is that all I can hope for is that the Oakland Roots one day becomes a household name.